The cold wind moved through the broken streets of the alien marketplace, carrying dust, smoke, and the quiet sound of suffering. Evan, a human traveler, walked slowly through the narrow path, looking at the strange alien shops and tired faces around him. He had seen poor places before, but this world felt different. Like the whole city had stopped breathing after the famine. Most shops were half empty, many streets were silent, and people avoided looking at each other. Evan pulled his jacket tighter and kept walking. Trying to stay invisible, humans were not welcome everywhere, and he knew this world had strict rules about helping the starving citizens. As he passed an old stone archway, he heard a soft voice, weak and shaking like it was breaking apart. "Please. Food, please." Anyone. The voice barely reached his ears, but something inside him stopped, like someone had grabbed his heart. He turned his head and saw an old alien grandmother sitting on the cold ground, her skin pale and dry, her arms shaking as she held a tiny girl in her lap. The girl looked no older than 5 or 6, her small hands gripping the old woman's clothes as if she feared losing her. The child's eyes were big, scared, and empty from hunger. People walked past them without stopping. Without even looking down at them, Evan stepped closer. Feeling a strange pressure in his chest, the grandmother lifted her head slowly, like she used the last of her strength just to see him. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Please, help my granddaughter, not me." Her. Evan knelt beside them, trying to understand the situation. The grandmother's clothes were torn, her skin covered with small wounds from the cold in the streets. The little girl's stomach was painfully thin, her lips dry and trembling. Evan asked softly, "How long since you both ate anything?" The grandmother shook her head. "I don't remember. Days, maybe more. I am too old." But she is only a child. Then something happened that shook Evan deeper than anything he had seen today. The grandmother pulled the little girl forward and whispered, "Take her, please. She will die with me. Take her so she can live." Evan froze, stunned by her words. He had heard of people giving away their children during famine, but seeing it happen in front of him felt unreal. The little girl, Mira, held her grandmother tightly, her eyes begging Evan not to reject her. The grandmother lowered her head and said again, "Humans. Humans have kind hearts. Please. Please save her." Evan felt anger boiling in him. Anger at the world, at the system, at the people walking by without caring. He asked, "What happened to your family?" The grandmother took a slow breath, her voice weak. "Famine came. Government took food only for working citizens. They said old ones and children are unproductive. My son died. Then his wife. Only Myra left." Her voice broke as she said the last words. Evan felt his throat tighten. Myra's small hand reached toward him, as if asking for safety without speaking. He touched her hand gently and said, "I'm not leaving you." But before he could ask more, the sound of heavy boots echoed from the far side of the street. Evan turned and saw armed patrols walking toward the marketplace, scanning the crowd for trouble. The grandmother's eyes widened with fear. She whispered, "Go. Hide if they see you helping us. They will take her. They will take her to a labor camp." Evan felt a sudden rush of urgency. He lifted Mira gently into his arms while helping the grandmother stand. Her legs shook so badly that she leaned completely on Evan for support. They moved quickly into a narrow alley, trying to stay hidden between the tall metal walls. The sound of the patrols grew louder, their voices sharp and cruel. Evan peeked around the corner and saw them talking to nearby merchants. One guard said loudly, "A human was seen giving aid to a starving class. Find him." Another guard added, "If the child is with him, take her too." Evan felt chills run down his spine. He pressed the grandmother and Mira deeper into the shadows. The grandmother whispered, "We are a burden to them. They want our food rations back. We are worth more to them dead." Evan took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Myra clung to his shirt, shivering. Her small voice whispered, "Uncle." "I'm scared." Evan held her tighter. His heart breaking at her trembling words, he promised quietly, "I won't let them touch you." But the danger grew worse when Evan noticed something else. A tall merchant pointed toward their hiding direction and shouted. The human went that way. Evan felt his heart jump. Footsteps thundered closer, louder, faster. The patrols were moving straight toward the alley. The grandmother's breathing turned shallow and panicked. Myra's hands tightened around Evan's clothes. Evan knew they had only seconds before being caught. He looked around desperately for a way out. His eyes landed on a broken metal door, half covered by debris. He pushed it open with his shoulder, guiding the grandmother and Mira inside. Inside was a small, dark storage room filled with old crates and dust. He closed the door gently, then pressed his back against it. Outside, the footsteps stopped right in front of the alley entrance. The patrol's shadows stretched across the ground, moving slowly, searching, waiting. Evan held his breath. The grandmother held Mira close, whispering silent prayers. Mira buried her face in Evan's chest, trying not to cry. Everything outside was quiet for a moment, too quiet. Then the handle of the metal door moved slightly. Someone was trying to open it. Evan tightened his grip. Mira trembled harder. The grandmother whispered, "Please, protect her." The handle moved again, this time stronger, and the patrol's muffled voice said, "He is hiding here. The hook ends here, suspense locked in place." The metal door shook again as the patrol tried to force it open. Evan pressed his back harder against it. Feeling the pressure grow stronger, Myra hid behind him, her small hands gripping his shirt tightly. The grandmother stood beside them, trembling, whispering weak prayers under her breath. Evan knew they could not stay there long. The patrol would break the old door if they tried one more time. Suddenly another voice called from outside. "There is movement in the next alley." The patrol turned away, their heavy boots moving further down the street. Evan waited, holding his breath, counting the seconds as their footsteps slowly faded. Only when everything became completely silent did he open the door a little and check the outside. The street was empty for now, but danger was still close. He looked at the grandmother and said softly, "We need to move." He supported her with one hand and carried Myra with the other. Mira rested her head on his shoulder, weak and exhausted. Her breath was too slow, too shallow, like she had used all her strength just to stay awake. The grandmother walked with difficulty, each step shaking her thin legs. Her voice broke as she asked, "Why? Why are you helping us?" "Human." Evan looked ahead and replied quietly, "Because no one else will." They moved into a quieter part of the old market, a place with broken homes and abandoned stalls. Here, the air felt heavier, filled with memories of families who once lived here. The grandmother stopped near a fallen stone pillar and sat down slowly. Almost collapsing, Evan helped her sit and lowered Mira beside her. The little girl curled into her grandmother's arms, but her eyes stayed on Evan. There was fear in her, but also something else, something like hope. Evan knelt in front of them, his voice calm. "Tell me everything. I need to understand." The grandmother took a deep breath, her chest rising painfully. She looked at the cracked ground and began to speak. "Before the famine, we had a small home. My son worked in the metal factory. We were not rich, but we lived." Her voice shook as she continued. "When the food shortage started, the government changed the laws. They said old citizens should give up their rations for the young workers. They said children who cannot work are wasted food." Evan felt anger burn in his chest. He could not understand how any world could call children worthless. The grandmother wiped her eyes and whispered, "My son lost his job first. Then he lost his life. His wife followed soon after. I tried to care for Myra, but they told me I should give her to the state. They said she would be useful in labor camps." Myra tightened her grip on her grandmother. Shaking her head as if remembering something painful, Evan asked softly, "Is that why you were begging?" The grandmother nodded slowly. "Yes, but no one is allowed to give food to us. The patrol will punish them. They call us unproductive mouths." Evan felt sick hearing those words. He looked at Myra, her thin arms, her trembling body, her tired eyes. He gently touched her hand, and she leaned toward him without fear. It was like she had already chosen him as her safe place. The grandmother watched this with weak eyes full of apology. "I tried everything," she whispered. "I sold our belongings. I cleaned streets for scraps. I walked to every shop, but no one helped. Then my legs stopped working, and Myra became too weak. And I—" She lowered her face, ashamed. "I tried to give her away." Evan shook his head firmly. "You were trying to save her." The grandmother looked up with trembling lips, her eyes glossy with tears. "No mother or grandmother should ever choose between living and letting go," she whispered. Myra rubbed her face into her grandmother's shoulder, whispering softly, "Grandma, don't cry." Evan looked around, thinking quickly. He knew staying here was dangerous. The patrol had seen him, and they would return. He also knew Myra needed food immediately, or she would not survive much longer across the street. Evan noticed a small supply stall with damaged walls and a broken sign. It looked abandoned, which meant the patrol might not check it. He signaled to the grandmother, "Wait here. I will find something to help." The grandmother grabbed his arm weakly, fear filling her eyes. "They will punish you if they catch you." Evan smiled gently. "Then they better not catch me." He moved quickly, staying low, avoiding open spaces. The stall was filled with dust, old crates, and broken tools. But in one corner, under a pile of cloth, he found something, a small metal container with a faded label. He opened it and found compressed nutrition tablets, old but still safe. He rushed back to the grandmother and placed one tablet into Myra's mouth. The little girl sucked on it slowly, her eyes half closing with relief. Her breathing steadied a little, though she was still very weak. The grandmother whispered with shaking voice, "You saved her. Even one tablet is life for her." Evan shook his head. "We're not done. We need to get you both somewhere safe." But before he could plan their escape, he heard voices again in the distance. The patrol had returned to search the area a second time. Their metal boots hit the ground in sharp, cold echoes. The grandmother's eyes widened with terror. Myra grabbed Evan's hand tightly. Evan looked around. Realizing the danger had doubled, the patrols were now closer than ever. And they were not searching randomly anymore. They were hunting. And someone had already told them where to look. The sound of metal boots grew louder as the patrol marched deeper into the ruined market. Evan looked around quickly, knowing they had only seconds before being discovered again. Myra held onto his hand tightly, her small fingers shaking with fear. The grandmother tried to stand, but her legs were too weak. She whispered with trembling breath, "I cannot run. Please. Save her if I fall." Evan knelt beside her and shook his head firmly. "I'm not leaving either of you." He lifted Myra into his arms and helped the grandmother lean against him. Together they moved silently through a narrow alley filled with broken crates and old pipes. The patrol voices echoed through the air, cold and sharp like knives cutting the silence. "Search every corner," one guard ordered. "The human is hiding the starving ones," another guard replied. "If we find them, the reward is doubled." Evan felt something twist inside him. A reward. That meant someone had placed a bounty on the grandmother and Mira. He whispered to her. "Do you know who wants you caught?" The grandmother nodded slowly. "Yes." "The merchant? The one with the red scarf? He wants our food credits. He can claim them if we disappear." Evan clenched his jaw, understanding the danger more clearly now. This wasn't only about hunger or laws. Someone was hunting them for profit. The patrol was working with greedy merchants. And the system allowed it. The alley ended near a collapsed building. Evan pushed aside a broken board and found a small entrance. It led into an old storage cellar, dark and dusty, but empty enough to hide in. He guided the grandmother down slowly, while holding Mira close to his chest. The temperature inside was colder. But at least the patrol wouldn't see them immediately. As soon as they were inside, Evan heard the patrol's footsteps enter the alley they had just left. The grandmother held Mira tightly, whispering prayers. Mira buried her face in Evan's neck, breathing weakly. Evan stood near the broken entrance, ready to move if needed. Voices came from outside. They were here. "Recent footprints," a guard said. "Good," another replied. "The merchant is paying extra if we bring them alive." Evan felt his anger rise again. Almost overwhelming. This wasn't survival. This was cruelty used as business. He moved deeper into the cellar, searching for another exit. There was a narrow passage filled with dust and tangled wires. It was tight, dark, and dangerous, but it was their best chance. He helped the grandmother walk through it, one slow step at a time. Mira clung to him silently, barely awake. Halfway through the passage, a loud crash echoed from behind. The patrol had broken the first hiding door and discovered it empty. Their footsteps and angry shouts followed. "They are close, don't let them escape." Evan pushed forward faster, guiding the grandmother with urgency. At the end of the passage, Evan found a rusted ladder leading upward. He climbed first with Mira in one arm, then helped the grandmother climb slowly. Every rung creaked loudly, sounding like warning bells in the silent night. When they reached the top, Evan pushed open a metal hatch. Moonlight spilled inside, cold and white. They had come out in a deserted courtyard behind an abandoned factory. For a moment, everything felt still. The air was quiet, and no patrols were nearby. Evan took a deep breath, but the grandmother whispered, "We are not safe yet." She was right. In the distance, Evan saw small red lights scanning the streets. Patrol drones. The search had grown bigger than before. He guided them behind stacked metal containers, trying to stay hidden. Myra's breathing was getting weaker again. Her small hands were cold, and her eyes kept closing. The grandmother touched her forehead and whispered with fear, "She needs real food, or she will not last." Evan knew that too well. He needed to get them out of this city, to his ship. But the guards were everywhere now. As they moved to another hiding spot, Evan heard something that made him freeze. A familiar voice, the merchant with the red scarf. He stood near a patrol captain. Pointing at a digital screen, Evan listened quietly, trying to catch their words. "There," the merchant said with a greedy smile. "That's the human. He took the child. Find them both and bring them to me." The captain nodded. "Alive or dead?" "Alive," the merchant replied. "I want the child to show the council. Proof that the grandmother cannot care for her." Evan felt pure anger burn through him. He whispered to the grandmother, "They want to take Mira from you forever." The grandmother's eyes filled with terror. She held Mira closer, whispering, "No, no." Evan leaned closer and said softly but firmly, "I promise. They will not take her." But before they could move, a sharp beeping sound came from above. A patrol drone had spotted movement near the containers. Its red light flashed directly onto them. Its alarm began to ring loudly through the night. Myra woke with a small cry. The grandmother gasped in panic. Evan grabbed them both and shouted, "Run now!" The drone's alarm echoed across the dark streets. Patrol boots thundered toward their location. Voices shouted orders. Lights flashed everywhere. And Evan knew the real chase had begun. The drone's alarm echoed loudly across the abandoned courtyard. Evan grabbed the grandmother's arm with one hand and held Mira close with the other. The red scanning light followed them as they ran between the metal containers. The grandmother struggled to keep up, her weak legs shaking badly. Evan slowed down only enough to keep her from falling. He whispered urgently, "Just a little more. Don't stop." Behind them, the patrol shouted orders and ran toward the noise. Bright lights began sweeping across the dark yard. Myra hid her face against Evan's shoulder, trembling from fear and exhaustion. Her breathing was shallow, her skin cold. The grandmother whispered, "Please, please save her." Evan tightened his grip and said, "I will. Just stay with me." They reached a locked gate at the end of the courtyard. The metal bars were tall and thick. Impossible to climb for the grandmother or Mira, but Evan didn't hesitate. He kicked the old rusted lock with all his strength. The metal cracked slightly, but did not break. He kicked again, gritting his teeth. Finally, the lock snapped, and the gate swung open with a loud creak. They stepped through, but the sound had already alerted the patrol. There! Someone shouted, "Stop the human!" Evan turned, seeing armed guards approaching fast. He pushed the grandmother behind a wall and whispered, "Stay low." He placed Mira gently beside her and stepped forward. A patrol guard aimed his weapon at Evan. "Don't move, human," the guard shouted. Evan raised his hand slowly, but his eyes stayed sharp. The guard smirked. "You think you can protect the starving ones? They're nothing." Evan's jaw clenched, anger rising in him like fire. He took one slow step to the side. The guard stepped closer. Evan suddenly grabbed a loose metal pipe from the ground. The guard moved to fire, but Evan swung the pipe hard, hitting the guard's weapon hand. The gun flew out of his grip, clattering across the ground. Another guard ran toward Evan. Evan ducked under the swing and struck the guard's knee. The alien fell with a scream. Evan pushed him aside and grabbed the fallen weapon before anyone else could. He didn't shoot. He fired at the ground, forcing the patrol back in fear. The flash of energy made them step away instinctively. Evan shouted, "Stay back. She's just a child." The grandmother watched with wide eyes. She had never seen a human fight like this. Not with cruelty, but with fierce, protective strength. Myra whispered weakly, "Uncle, don't get hurt." Her small voice gave Evan even more determination. Just when more guards started surrounding them, something unexpected happened. A group of alien workers appeared at the far side of the street. They wore old clothes, tired expressions, and carried simple tools. One of them shouted, "Leave them alone." Another said, "Rima helped our families before the famine. We won't let you take her grandchild." The patrol captain turned angrily. "Stand down. You have no right." But the workers formed a protective line, blocking the patrol from advancing. They didn't have weapons, but they had courage, and they were many. The captain growled, frustrated, "Move aside or be punished." One worker stepped forward, holding a metal wrench. "We are already punished every day," he said. "We won't let you hurt them." The distraction gave Evan precious seconds. He lifted the grandmother again and picked up Myra. They ran behind the workers, who shouted and made noise to delay the patrol. A guard tried to follow, but a worker swung a tool at his feet. Slowing him down, Evan nodded gratefully at them. Even though they could not see his face, they reached a broken fence near the old factory. Beyond it was a long road leading to the outer district, and eventually to Evan's small ship. But the grandmother suddenly gasped. Her legs finally gave out. Evan helped her sit gently on the ground. She clutched her chest, breathing painfully. I can't go further. I'm slowing you, she whispered. Evan shook his head firmly. No, you're not staying behind. Myra weakly reached out and held her grandmother's hand. Grandma, don't leave me. Her tiny voice cracked with fear. The grandmother brushed her cheek softly, tears filling her tired eyes. My sweet Myra, you must live. You must be safe. Evan knelt in front of them and spoke with calm strength. Both of you are coming with me. I'm not letting anyone take you. He lifted the grandmother onto his back. Myra held onto his shirt from the front, even with both of them. Evan ran. His legs burned. His lungs ached. But he didn't stop. Behind them, the patrol shouted as they broke past the workers. The chase had begun again, louder and more furious than before. Evan reached a narrow tunnel under a collapsed bridge. He ducked inside just as energy blasts fired behind him. Sparks exploded against the stone walls. Lighting up the darkness, Myra cried softly. The grandmother whispered, Please, don't let them take her. Evan tightened his arms around them and whispered, They won't. I promise. And with patrols closing in on both sides, Evan pushed deeper into the tunnel, racing toward the only hope left, his ship. Evan pushed through the dark tunnel, with the grandmother on his back and Myra in his arms. Every breath felt heavy, but he didn't stop. Behind them, the patrol's angry shouts echoed through the broken stone. Energy blasts hit the walls, sending sparks across the ground. Myra held onto him tightly, her little fingers shaking. The grandmother whispered weakly, Just a little more. Just a little more. At the end of the tunnel, Evan reached a cracked metal gate. He kicked it open and stepped out into the open desert beyond the city. Cold wind rushed past them, carrying the smell of sand and freedom. In the distance, Evan saw the faint silhouette of his ship, hidden behind large rocks. It was small, old, but fast enough to outrun patrols. He took a deep breath and began running again. But Myra's breathing grew weaker with every step. Her tiny head rested against Evan's shoulder. Barely moving, her skin felt too cold, too soft. Like life was slipping away, the grandmother cried softly, Please, please don't let her go. Evan whispered, Hold on, Myra. We're almost there. The patrol emerged from the tunnel behind them. Lights flashing, weapons raised, shouting for Evan to stop. Energy beams struck the sand around his feet, sending dust into the air. But Evan didn't turn. He ran faster, fueled by pure fear and pure determination. Myra needed help now, not later. Finally, he reached the ship. He lowered the grandmother gently onto the sand and rushed to open the hatch. The ship's lights flickered to life as he carried Myra inside. He placed her on a soft seat and grabbed a small emergency medical kit. His hands moved quickly, mixing nutrient serum with purified water. Myra's eyes fluttered weakly as he lifted her head. He whispered, Drink? Please. He placed the small tube against her lips. At first she didn't react. Then slowly, very slowly, she swallowed. Her breathing steadied just a little. Her fingers twitched around Evan's hand. The grandmother reached inside the ship, crying with relief. Thank the stars? Thank the stars? But the danger wasn't over. Outside, the patrol reached the rocks and fired at the ship. Energy blasts struck the hull, shaking the floor inside. Evan rushed to the controls and powered up the engines. The ship hummed loudly. As the thrusters awakened, he shouted, Hold on. The grandmother held Myra close as the ship lifted off the ground. The engines roared, sending dust flying into the air. Patrol guards shouted and fired again. The shots hit the lower side of the ship, but didn't break through. Evan steered upward sharply, rising into the night sky. The patrols became smaller and smaller below them, until they were only distant lights lost in the darkness. The ship broke through the clouds and entered the quiet space above the planet. Evan finally let out a long breath. His hands trembled from the adrenaline and fear. The grandmother sat beside Myra, brushing her hair gently. She whispered, "She is breathing." "She is still here." Myra opened her eyes a little and looked at Evan. Her voice was soft, almost silent. "Uncle, are we safe?" Evan smiled gently and touched her forehead. "Yes, Myra. We're safe now." Her small hand reached toward him. She held his finger like she never wanted to let go. The grandmother wiped her tears, her voice shaking with emotion. "Human, you saved us. You saved my granddaughter. And you saved me." Evan shook his head softly. "No. I just did what anyone should do." The grandmother gave a sad, tired smile. "Not anyone. Only humans do this. Only you." Evan set the ship on a safe course toward a human-controlled colony, a place where famine laws didn't exist, a place where Myra could grow, learn, and smile again. The grandmother looked out the window at the stars, her voice filled with quiet hope. Maybe this is our new home." Myra leaned against Evan's arm, her voice sleepy and soft. "Can we stay with you?" "Please." Evan looked down at her, his heart warm. "You're family now," he said, "and family stays together." The grandmother closed her eyes and whispered, "In the darkest night, a human brought light to us." Evan looked at the stars ahead, guiding them toward a better life, and for the first time in a long time, Myra smiled, a small, gentle smile full of new hope. The ship flew forward into the vast sky, carrying 3 lives who had found something rare in the cold universe: kindness, safety, and family.